The morning shift at Rosie's Diner started the same way it had for the past 3 years. The smell of fresh coffee brewing, the sizzle of bacon on the griddle, and the gentle chime of the bell above the door as the first customers walked in. For most people, this would be just another day at work, but for Lisa Chen, it was the rhythm she'd come to love. There was something comforting about the predictability of it all. Lisa had taken the job at Rosie's right after moving to town. She needed something stable, something that would pay the bills while she figured out what came next in her life. 3 years later, she was still there, and honestly, she didn't mind it one bit. Sure, her feet hurt by the end of each shift, and yes, some customers could be difficult, but there was a warmth to the place that felt like home. The regulars knew her by name. She knew their orders by heart. It was a small world, but it was hers. Every Tuesday and Thursday morning, like clockwork, Mr. Thompson would walk through that door at exactly 8 o'clock. You could set your watch by him. He was in his 70s, maybe older, with silver hair that he kept neatly combed and glasses that sat just slightly crooked on his nose. He always wore a brown cardigan, even in summer, and carried a leather notebook that looked like it had seen better days. The leather was cracked and worn smooth from years of handling, and the pages inside were yellowed with age. Mr. Thompson was what Lisa called a quiet regular. Some customers loved to chat, sharing stories about their grandkids or complaining about the weather. Others, like Mr. Thompson, preferred their solitude. He'd nod politely when she greeted him, offer a soft thank you when she brought his order, and that was about it. His order never changed. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream, and 1 blueberry muffin warmed up. Simple, consistent, just like him. Lisa often wondered about him. What did he do before retirement? Did he have family in town? What was he writing in that notebook? She'd catch glimpses sometimes when she refilled his coffee, sketches mostly, detailed drawings of buildings and streets. Sometimes there were notes scribbled in the margins, but his handwriting was small and she never wanted to pry. Everyone deserved their privacy, especially the quiet ones who weren't bothering anyone. On this particular Thursday morning, the diner was unusually slow. The breakfast rush had come and gone earlier than usual, and by the time Mr. Thompson settled into his usual booth by the window, only 2 other tables were occupied. Lisa brought over his coffee and muffin without him having to ask. He gave her that same small nod, that same soft, thank you, and opened his notebook like he always did. Lisa busied herself wiping down tables and refilling salt shakers. The cook in the back, old Pete, was humming along to the radio. Everything felt normal, peaceful even. Then she heard it. A soft sound, almost like a sigh, coming from Mr. Thompson's booth. When she glanced over, she saw him staring down at his notebook with an expression she'd never seen on his face before. It looked like sadness mixed with surprise, like he'd just remembered something he'd tried hard to forget. She was about to look away, to give him his privacy, when something fell from his notebook onto the floor. A photograph. It had slipped out from between the pages and landed face up on the tile. Mr. Thompson didn't seem to notice. He was too absorbed in whatever he was reading. Lisa walked over, intending to pick it up and hand it back to him. But when she bent down and saw the photograph, something made her pause. It was an old picture, black and white, probably from the 1970s based on the style. A young woman stood in the center of the frame, maybe in her late 20s or early 30s. She had dark hair that fell past her shoulders and a smile that seemed to light up the whole photograph. But it wasn't the woman that caught Lisa's attention, even though there was something captivating about her joy and confidence. It was the building behind her. Lisa's breath caught in her throat. She knew that building. She'd walked through its doors every Saturday and Sunday for the past 2 years. It was the old community center on Elm Street, the one where she volunteered on weekends, helping organize activities for kids and teaching basic computer skills to elderly residents. The building in the photograph looked different, though. Newer. The bricks were still red and clean, not weathered and faded like they were now. The windows weren't cracked. The wooden door still had its original paint, but it was definitely the same place. Lisa picked up the photograph carefully as if it might crumble in her hands. She straightened up and cleared her throat softly. Mr. Thompson looked up from his notebook, and for a moment their eyes met. There was something vulnerable in his expression, something she'd never seen before. The quiet, reserved man who came in twice a week suddenly seemed different. More human, more real. "This fell from your notebook," Lisa said gently, holding out the photograph. Mr. Thompson's eyes went immediately to the picture. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for it. Not much, just enough for Lisa to notice. He took it from her and held it carefully like it was the most precious thing in the world. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. He just stared at the photograph, and Lisa could see his jaw tighten, like he was fighting back emotions he didn't want anyone to see. "Thank you," he finally said, his voice quieter than usual. Lisa should have walked away then. She should have gone back to her work and let him have his moment. But something made her stay. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the volunteer work she did at that very building in the photo. Or maybe it was just that look on his face, like he was holding on to a memory that both hurt and comforted him at the same time. "That building," she said carefully, trying to keep her tone casual and not too invasive. "On Elm Street. I volunteer there on weekends." Mr. Thompson's head snapped up so fast it startled her. The guarded expression he usually wore completely vanished. In its place was something raw and unfiltered. Surprise, recognition, and something else she couldn't quite name. It looked almost like hope, but mixed with fear. "You volunteer there?" he asked, and his voice sounded different, stronger, more present. "Yeah," Lisa said, warming to the topic now. "It's a great place. They do a lot for the neighborhood. Classes for kids, meals for seniors, that kind of thing. The building's pretty old, though. Needs a lot of repairs we can't really afford." Mr. Thompson continued to stare at her, like he was seeing her for the first time, even though she'd served him coffee hundreds of times before. His fingers traced the edge of the photograph unconsciously. "Do they still have the mural?" he asked suddenly. "In the main hall, a big oak tree with branches spreading across the whole wall?" Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. How did he know about that? The mural was one of her favorite things about the center. It was painted directly on the wall, this massive oak tree with intricate branches reaching out in all directions. Some of the branches had names written on them, community members from decades ago. The paint was faded now, peeling in places, and there was water damage in the lower right corner from a leak they'd fixed last year. But it was still beautiful, still powerful. "Yes," she said slowly. "It's still there. We've been trying to raise money to restore it, actually. It's in pretty rough shape." Something changed in Mr. Thompson's face. His eyes grew distant, like he was looking past her, past the diner, past the present moment entirely. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I painted that mural," he said, 52 years ago." The words hung in the air between them. The coffee pot in Lisa's hand suddenly felt very heavy. Around them, the diner continued its normal rhythm. Pete hummed in the kitchen. A couple at another table laughed at something. The coffee machine hissed. But in this booth, by this window, time seemed to have stopped entirely. Lisa pulled out the chair across from Mr. Thompson without asking permission. She set down her coffee pot and sat down, leaning forward slightly. The morning could wait. The other customers could wait. This felt important in a way she couldn't quite explain. "You painted it?" she repeated, wanting to make sure she'd heard correctly. Mr. Thompson nodded slowly. He looked down at the photograph again, at the young woman with the bright smile, at the building that was so familiar yet so different. When he looked back up at Lisa, there were tears gathering in the corners of his eyes, though he didn't let them fall. "It was a long time ago," he said. "I was a different person then." And just like that, the quiet, regular customer she'd known for 3 years became someone else entirely. Someone with a story? Someone with a past connected to a place she cared about deeply. Lisa settled into her seat, forgetting about the coffee that needed refilling and the tables that needed wiping. "Would you tell me about it?" she asked softly. Mr. Thompson looked at her for a long moment, weighing something in his mind. Then slowly he nodded, and for the first time in 3 years he began to talk. Mr. Thompson set the photograph down on the table between them, positioning it carefully so both of them could see it. His fingers lingered on the edges, reluctant to let go completely. Lisa noticed his hands were shaking just slightly, the way hands do when someone is about to share something they've kept locked inside for a very long time. "Her name was Elena Rodriguez," he began, his eyes fixed on the woman in the photograph. "She was the reason that community center exists at all." Lisa leaned in, drawn by the way his voice changed when he spoke the name. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was something deeper, something that still mattered after all these years. It was 1973. Mr. Thompson continued, and a small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, the kind that comes from remembering better days. I was 26 years old, fresh out of architecture school, full of ideas about changing the world through design. You know how young people are. Everything seems possible. Lisa nodded, staying quiet, not wanting to interrupt the flow of his story. The neighborhood around Elm Street was different back then. Struggling, a lot of immigrant families, people working 2 or 3 jobs just to get by. There wasn't much for the kids to do after school. No safe spaces for people to gather. The crime rate was going up. Business owners were starting to leave. It felt like the whole area was just slowly falling apart. He paused to take a sip of his coffee, which had probably gone cold by now, but he didn't seem to notice or care. Elena was a community organizer. She'd grown up in that neighborhood and she refused to watch it die. She had this vision of creating a space that could bring everyone together, a place where kids could do homework and play safely, where adults could take classes, learn new skills, find support. She wanted to prove that the neighborhood was worth investing in, worth fighting for. The way he talked about her, Lisa could tell this wasn't just respect or admiration. This was something more. Even after 52 years, just saying her name seemed to light something up inside him. She organized meetings, went door to door talking to residents, pestered every local politician and business owner she could find, and somehow, against all odds, she got people to listen. A local church donated an old building they weren't using anymore. That building on Elm Street, it was in terrible shape. Leaking roof, broken windows, mold everywhere. But Elena saw what it could become. Mr. Thompson picked up the photograph again, studying it like he was trying to memorize every detail, even though Lisa suspected he'd looked at it 1,000 times before. She put out a call for volunteers, people who could help renovate the building. I saw a flyer at the grocery store and something about it spoke to me. Maybe I wanted to feel useful. Maybe I just wanted to see if my expensive education could actually help real people. I showed up that first Saturday morning with my tools and my drawings, ready to offer my architectural expertise. A real laugh escaped him now, soft but genuine. Elena took one look at me and my fancy blueprints and said, "That's great, but can you swing a hammer?" I'd never done real construction work in my life. I'd only designed buildings, never actually built one. But she handed me a hammer anyway and put me to work tearing out old drywall. Lisa found herself smiling too, picturing this younger version of Mr. Thompson, probably overdressed and underprepared, trying to prove himself. There were about 30 of us that first day. Carpenters, plumbers, electricians, and plenty of people who had no skills at all but showed up anyway, because Elena had asked them to. She had this way of making you believe you could do anything. She'd walk around the construction site in her jeans and work boots covered in dust and paint, solving problems and encouraging everyone. When someone got frustrated or wanted to give up, she'd be right there, reminding them why we were doing this. His voice had taken on a warmth that Lisa had never heard before. This wasn't the reserved, quiet man who came in for coffee twice a week. This was someone remembering the best time of his life. We worked every weekend for 4 months. Spring turned into summer, summer into fall. I learned how to do real construction work, how to install windows, sand floors, patch walls. But more than that, I learned about the community, the families who lived there, their stories, their struggles, their hopes. Elena made sure we weren't just building a building. We were building something that belonged to everyone who helped create it. He paused, his expression shifting to something more tender. Elena and I started arriving early and staying late. We'd walk through the building together, discussing ideas. She'd tell me what the community needed, and I'd figure out how to make it work within the space and our almost non-existent budget. We'd sit on the front steps during breaks, sharing sandwiches and talking about everything. Her dreams for the neighborhood. My dreams for my career. What we wanted our lives to look like. Lisa could see where this was going, but she didn't rush him. Some stories needed to be told at their own pace. I fell in love with her, Mr. Thompson said simply, finally speaking the truth of it out loud. How could I not? She was brilliant and passionate and caring. She could organize 100 volunteers and remember every single person's name. She could sweet-talk a supplier into donating materials and then turn around and tell off a city inspector who was trying to shut us down. She was everything I'd ever admired in a person. Did you tell her? Lisa asked gently. Mr. Thompson shook his head slowly. I was working up to it. I kept thinking I'd find the right moment, the right words. I was young and stupid and convinced I had all the time in the world. He traced the outline of Elena's face in the photograph with his fingertip. So gently it was like he was afraid of hurting her, even in a picture. The center opened in November of 1973. We had this big celebration. The whole neighborhood turned out. Music, food, dancing. Elena gave a speech about community and hope, and what we could accomplish when we worked together. She thanked every single volunteer by name. When she got to me, she called me her architectural genius, and everyone laughed because by then they all knew I'd been useless with a hammer at the start. His smile faded. After her speech, she asked me to paint something in the main hall, something permanent that would remind people what the center stood for. That's when I painted the oak tree mural. I worked on it for 2 weeks straight, every evening after my regular job. The oak tree represented strength and growth. The branches spreading out represented the community, everyone connected. I put everything I had into that mural. Every brushstroke felt important. "It's beautiful," Lisa said quietly. "Even now, even faded and damaged, you can feel how much care went into it." On the day I finished it, Elena came to see it. She stood there for the longest time just looking at it. Then she turned to me with tears in her eyes and said it was perfect. She hugged me, and I swear that was the happiest moment of my entire life. I was going to tell her then. Tell her how I felt. But someone called her away to deal with some administrative issue, and the moment passed. Mr. Thompson's voice grew quieter now, heavier. I told myself I'd tell her the next week. But that Monday, I got a job offer. A big architectural firm in Seattle wanted to hire me. It was an incredible opportunity, the kind of thing I dreamed about in school. My career would be set. But it meant moving across the country, leaving immediately. Lisa felt her heart sink knowing what was coming. "I took the job," he said, and there was so much regret in those 4 words. I told myself it was the practical choice, the smart choice. I went to tell Elena goodbye to explain. She was happy for me, excited for my future. She gave me another hug and said I'd do amazing things. I still didn't tell her. I convinced myself that it wouldn't be fair to her, confessing my feelings when I was about to leave. What was the point? "So you just left?" Lisa asked, trying to keep any judgment out of her voice. "I just left," he confirmed. "I moved to Seattle the next week. I threw myself into work. I built a successful career, designed office buildings and hotels and apartment complexes. I got married, had 2 kids, got divorced, kept working, retired. Moved back to this area a few years ago because I'd always loved it here. Normal life, I guess, except..." He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. "Except you never forgot her," Lisa said. "Never," he agreed. "Over the years I'd think about her. Wonder what she was doing, if she was happy, if she ever thought about me. I tried looking her up a few times, but I never found her. She could have moved away, gotten married and changed her name, anything. And honestly, part of me was too afraid to really search. What if I found out something I didn't want to know? What if she'd forgotten all about me? What if she remembered me but didn't care? After a while, it seemed easier to just keep her as a good memory." "But you kept the photograph," Lisa pointed out. "I kept the photograph," he admitted. "And I've driven past the community center hundreds of times since moving back. I've never gone inside. I couldn't bring myself to. Too many memories. But I carry this notebook with all my old sketches from that time. Sometimes I look at them and remember what it felt like to be 26 and in love and stupid enough to walk away from it." They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the diner had gotten busier. The lunch crowd was starting to trickle in. But Lisa didn't move. Something was tugging at her mind, something important. That name, Elena Rodriguez. Why did it sound so familiar? Not just from this conversation, but from somewhere else. Somewhere recent. Then it hit her like a lightning bolt. The cooking classes. The community center offered cooking classes twice a month for immigrant families, teaching them how to prepare affordable, nutritious meals with ingredients they could find locally. The woman who taught those classes was named Elena, an older woman, probably in her 70s, with silver hair she kept in a braid and warm brown eyes that crinkled when she smiled. She wore colorful scarves and had this way of making everyone in the room feel welcome and capable. Lisa's heart started beating faster. Could it be? Was it possible? "Mr. Thompson," she said slowly, carefully, because this felt like standing on the edge of something important and potentially fragile. "This is going to sound strange, but I need to ask you something." He looked up at her, curious about the change in her tone. Elena Rodriguez. Did she have any distinguishing features? Something that would still be noticeable now? He thought for a moment. She had a small scar above her left eyebrow. From when she was a kid, she told me. Fell off her bike. Lisa's breath caught. The Elena who taught cooking classes had that exact scar. She'd noticed it before, thought it gave her face character. Lisa's hands had started trembling. She gripped the edge of the table to steady herself, trying to process what she'd just realized. The pieces were fitting together in a way that seemed almost too perfect to be real. But the scar, that specific detail, it couldn't be a coincidence, Mr. Thompson, she said, and her voice came out shaky with excitement and nervousness. I think she's still there, at the community center. I think Elena still volunteers there. The color drained from his face. For a moment, Lisa worried he might actually faint. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He just stared at her like she'd told him the earth had stopped spinning. There's a woman who teaches cooking classes, Lisa continued, speaking quickly now, the words tumbling out. Twice a month for immigrant families. Her name is Elena. She's probably in her 70s. Silver hair, kind eyes, and yes, she has a small scar above her left eyebrow. I've talked to her a few times. She's wonderful. Everyone loves her. Mr. Thompson's hand moved to his chest, pressing against his heart like he needed to make sure it was still beating. Elena, he whispered. After all these years, she's still there? I can't be 100% certain it's the same person, Lisa said, though in her gut she knew it was. But the age is right, the name is right, the scar is right, and she's been connected to that center for decades. One of the other volunteers told me she was part of the original group that founded the place. Mr. Thompson looked down at his hands, which were shaking visibly now. He seemed to be struggling with something, torn between hope and fear. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. Is she? Does she seem happy? The question broke Lisa's heart a little. Here was this man who had carried a torch for 52 years, and his first concern wasn't whether Elena remembered him or would want to see him. It was whether she was happy. That told Lisa everything she needed to know about his character. She seems content, Lisa said honestly. She smiles a lot. She's patient with the people in her classes. She always asks about their families, remembers details from previous conversations. She seems like someone who's lived a good life. Mr. Thompson nodded slowly, taking that in. Then he did something that surprised Lisa. He started gathering his things. He picked up the photograph, carefully placed it back in his notebook, and stood up. His coffee was still half full, his muffin barely touched. Thank you for telling me, he said formally, pulling out his wallet to pay. Wait, Lisa said, standing up too. That's it? You're just going to leave? He wouldn't meet her eyes. What else would I do? Go see her, Lisa said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. The cooking class is this Saturday at 10 in the morning. You could come. You could talk to her. Mr. Thompson shook his head firmly. I can't, it's been too long. She probably doesn't even remember me. And if she does, what would I say? Sorry I disappeared 52 years ago without telling you how I felt? That I've spent half a century thinking about you? I'd sound like a crazy old man. You wouldn't, Lisa insisted. Mr. Thompson, this is a second chance. How many people get that? But he was already moving toward the door, leaving money on the counter for his bill and a generous tip. Lisa followed him, aware that the other customers were starting to stare but not caring. I appreciate what you're trying to do, he said when they reached the door, but some things are better left in the past. She's built a life. I don't have any right to disrupt it just because I'm old and sentimental. What if she wanted you to disrupt it? Lisa called after him as he stepped outside. He paused on the sidewalk, his back to her. For a moment she thought he might turn around, but then he continued walking, getting into his old sedan and driving away. Lisa stood in the doorway of the diner, frustrated and heartbroken for two people who didn't even know their story wasn't finished yet. The next Tuesday, Mr. Thompson didn't show up. His usual booth by the window sat empty at 8 o'clock. Lisa kept glancing at the door, hoping to see him walk in, but the morning rush came and went without any sign of him. She tried to tell herself he probably just needed time to process everything, that he'd show up Thursday like always. But deep down she worried she'd scared him off, pushed too hard, ruined the fragile routine that had brought him comfort. Thursday morning arrived. Lisa got to work early, anxious and hopeful. 7:45 came and went. 8 o'clock. 8:15. The breakfast crowd filled the diner, but not the one person she was watching for. By 8:30, she'd accepted that he wasn't coming. She'd overstepped. She should have kept her mouth shut and let him enjoy his coffee and muffin in peace, instead of dredging up a past that was too painful to revisit. But then, at 8:45, the bell above the door chimed. Mr. Thompson walked in, and Lisa's relief was so intense she almost dropped the coffee pot she was holding. He looked different, though. More tired, like he hadn't been sleeping well. His cardigan was buttoned wrong and his hair wasn't as neatly combed as usual. He carried his leather notebook but also a package wrapped in brown paper and string. He didn't sit at his usual booth. Instead, he walked straight to the counter where Lisa was standing. The other waitress raised an eyebrow but moved aside to give them space. "I've been thinking," Mr. Thompson said without preamble, "and I can't do it. I can't go see her. The fear is too strong. What if she's married? What if she had a wonderful life and I'm just some guy she worked with 50 years ago? What if seeing me brings up memories she'd rather leave buried?" Lisa started to respond, but he held up a hand. "However," he continued, "I can't stop thinking about what you said, about second chances, and even if I'm too much of a coward to take mine, maybe I can at least let her know that what we did mattered, that I never forgot." He held out the package. "I worked on this all week. Would you give it to her, to Elena? You don't have to mention me by name if you don't want to. Just tell her it's from someone who remembers 1973. Lisa took the package, feeling the weight of it in her hands. "What is it?" "A sketch," he said, "of the community center as it looked when we first finished it. And a letter. Nothing inappropriate or uncomfortable. Just an acknowledgement of the work she did, the lives she changed. I thought maybe it would mean something to her." "It would mean more if it came from you in person," Lisa said gently. Mr. Thompson's eyes filled with tears, but he smiled sadly. "Some of us aren't as brave as we'd like to be. This is the best I can do." Lisa wanted to argue, but she could see in his face that he'd already wrestled with this decision. This package, this gesture, it had taken everything he had. Pushing him further wouldn't help. "Okay," she said. "I'll give it to her." This Saturday at the cooking class, his relief was visible. "Thank you. And Lisa, I'm sorry I missed Tuesday. I just needed some time. I understand. Your usual booth is open if you want it." He nodded and moved to his spot by the window. Lisa brought him his black coffee and blueberry muffin, and everything seemed to go back to normal. Except nothing was normal anymore. Lisa spent the rest of her shift hyper-aware of the package sitting in her locker in the back room. It felt important. Heavy with significance and history and feelings that had waited 52 years to be expressed. When Saturday morning came, Lisa dressed carefully for her volunteer shift. She'd thought about what to wear, how to approach this, what to say. The package was in her bag, and her stomach was full of butterflies. She felt like she was carrying something precious and breakable, responsible for a moment that could change two people's lives. She arrived at the community center early. The old brick building looked exactly like it always did, weathered and worn but still standing strong. Inside, the main hall with the faded oak tree mural greeted her. Lisa paused to look at it, really look at it, imagining a younger Mr. Thompson painting each branch with love and hope. The cooking class was set up in the large kitchen area at the back of the building. Elena arrived right at 9:30 as she always did, carrying bags of ingredients and wearing a bright blue scarf. She greeted Lisa with a warm smile. "Good morning, dear. Ready to teach some families how to make vegetable soup today?" "Actually," Lisa said, her heart pounding, "I have something for you. Before the class starts, do you have a minute?" Elena's expression shifted to curiosity. "Of course, is everything all right?" They moved to a quiet corner of the room. Lisa pulled out the package and her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped it. "Someone asked me to give this to you," she said. Someone who remembers 1973. The change in Elena was immediate. Her whole body went still. The color rose in her cheeks. Her hand moved to her throat like she was trying to protect herself from whatever emotions were about to hit. 1973, she repeated softly. "The year we opened this place." "Just open it," Lisa encouraged. "Please." Elena's hands shook as she untied the string and carefully unwrapped the brown paper. Inside was a large sketch, beautifully rendered in pencil and charcoal. It showed the community center as it had looked 52 years ago, restored and new and full of promise. Every detail was perfect, from the clean bricks to the uncracked windows to the original wooden door. In front of the building, sketched with obvious care and attention, stood a young woman with flowing dark hair and a brilliant smile. Elena gasped. One hand flew to her mouth. Tears immediately spilled down her cheeks. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Jamie." Lisa felt her own eyes filling with tears. "Jamie? That's what I called him," Elena said, her voice breaking. His full name was James Thompson, but to me he was always Jamie. The young architect who showed up knowing nothing about construction but willing to learn. The man who painted the mural in the main hall. The man who left. She traced the figure in the drawing with a trembling finger. He remembered. After all these years, he remembered. "There's a note," Lisa said, pointing to the folded piece of paper that had fallen onto Elena's lap. Elena picked it up with shaking hands and read it silently. Lisa watched as more tears fell, watched as Elena's face went through a dozen different emotions. Elena read the note 3 times before she could speak. When she finally looked up at Lisa, her face was a mixture of joy and heartbreak that was almost painful to witness. "Where is he?" Elena asked, her voice urgent. "The person who gave you this, where did they get it?" Lisa hesitated. Mr. Thompson had asked her not to mention him by name if she didn't want to. But looking at Elena's face, seeing the desperate hope there, she couldn't keep the secret. "He comes into the diner where I work," Lisa admitted. "Twice a week. He's lived in the area for a few years now. When I mentioned that I volunteer here, he told me about the mural, about you, about 1973. I realized you might be the same Elena from his story." Elena clutched the sketch to her chest. "He's been here? In town for years?" "He's driven past the center many times," Lisa said gently. "But he never came in. He thought too much time had passed. He was afraid you wouldn't remember him or wouldn't want to see him." A sound escaped Elena that was half laugh, half sob. "Not remember him? I've thought about Jamie Thompson almost every day for 52 years. I looked for him after he left, you know. I called every architectural firm in Seattle I could find, but no one had heard of him. Either he was using a different name professionally or I just never found the right place. Eventually I had to accept that he was gone." She wiped her eyes with the corner of her scarf. "I never married. People always asked why, and I'd give them practical reasons. I was too focused on my work. I never met the right person. But the truth was I'd already met the right person. I just didn't tell him before he left." Lisa felt like her heart was breaking and mending at the same time. "He said the same thing. That he wanted to tell you how he felt but ran out of time." Elena laughed, a real laugh this time, though tears still streamed down her face. "We were both cowards then. 2 people in love, too afraid to say it out loud, and we lost 50 years because of it." "It's not too late," Lisa said urgently. "He's still here. I know where to find him." But Elena shook her head and Lisa felt a wave of frustration. These 2 people both wanting the same thing, both too scared to reach for it. "I can't just show up at his door or his work," Elena said. "It's been too long. He sent you with this sketch because he wasn't ready to see me in person. I have to respect that. Maybe he just needed me to know he remembered. Maybe that's all this is meant to be." "With all due respect," Lisa said, more boldly than she'd ever spoken to Elena before. "That's ridiculous. You just said you've thought about him every day for 52 years. He's thought about you the same way. You're both single. You're both still here, and you're both too stubborn to take the first step." Elena stared at her, surprised by the outburst. Then slowly a smile spread across her face. "You're right. You're absolutely right. I've spent my whole life telling other people to fight for what matters, to not give up on their communities, their dreams, their families. And here I am, ready to let the man I loved slip away for a second time because I'm scared." She stood up, still clutching the sketch. "Where is he? This diner you work at?" Lisa's heart leapt. "Rosie's Diner on 5th Street. He comes in Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 in the morning. But Elena, maybe you should think about this. Plan what you want to say. You don't have to rush." "I'm 77 years old," Elena said with a laugh. "I don't have time not to rush. The cooking class can wait. Will you come with me? I could use the moral support." 20 minutes later, Lisa found herself in Elena's car heading toward the diner. It wasn't Tuesday or Thursday, and it was Saturday afternoon, not morning, so Mr. Thompson wouldn't be there. But Elena wanted to see where he sat, where he spent his quiet mornings with his coffee and memories. When they arrived, the lunch crowd was in full swing. Pete saw Lisa walk in with Elena and raised an eyebrow, clearly wondering why she was there on her day off. Lisa led Elena to the booth by the window, Mr. Thompson's usual spot. Elena slid into the seat and placed her hands on the table, as if trying to feel some connection to the man who sat there twice a week. She looked out the window at the street, seeing what he saw during those quiet mornings. "He'd sit here and think about me?" she asked softly. "He'd sit here with his notebook full of old sketches from 1973, Lisa confirmed. "I think remembering you was the closest thing he had to being with you." Elena's eyes filled with tears again. "I need to see him. Lisa, I know it's a lot to ask, but do you have his phone number or address? Any way to contact him?" Lisa's heart sank. "I don't. He's just a regular customer. I never needed to contact him outside the diner." They sat in silence for a moment, both trying to figure out what to do next. Then Pete called from the kitchen. "Lisa, is everything okay?" "Yeah, Pete, everything's fine." "Your regular, the Thompson guy, he left his notebook here on Tuesday. It's in the lost and found if you want to save it for him." Lisa's head snapped up. "He left his notebook?" "Yeah, the leather one he always has. Found it in the booth after he left." Lisa looked at Elena. "His notebook, the one with all the sketches and notes from 1973. He must have been distracted when he left." "Can I see it?" Elena asked quietly. "I know it's private, but if there's an address or phone number in there." Lisa retrieved the notebook from the lost and found box behind the counter. It felt wrong to go through a customer's personal belongings, but this was different. This was important. She handed it to Elena. Elena opened the notebook with reverent care, treating each page like it was sacred. And in a way, it was. Sketches of buildings filled the pages, notes about measurements and materials. But then they found pages from 1973. Drawings of the community center in various stages of renovation, sketches of volunteers working together. And there, on one page, a beautiful portrait of a young woman with flowing dark hair and a smile that could light up a room. "He drew me," Elena whispered, tears falling onto the page. "I never knew he drew me." They kept turning pages and there were more. Elena laughing while painting a wall. Elena talking to a group of volunteers. Elena standing in front of the finished building, captured in the same moment as the photograph Mr. Thompson still carried with him. Tucked in the back of the notebook, they found a business card. It was old, the edges worn, but the information was still readable. James Thompson, architect, and an address in Seattle that had been crossed out. But written below it in fresher ink was a local address. He'd updated his contact information in his own notebook. "I have his address," Elena said, her voice shaking. "I could go there. Right now. But what if he doesn't want to see me? What if getting that sketch to me was his way of saying goodbye, of getting closure? Or," Lisa suggested, "what if it was him reaching out in the only way he felt brave enough to? What if he's sitting at home right now, hoping you got the sketch, wishing he'd had the courage to deliver it himself?" Elena sat with that for a long moment. Then she carefully wrote down the address on a napkin, closed the notebook, and handed it back to Lisa. "I need to do this properly," she said. "I'm going to go home, compose my thoughts, maybe write him a letter first. Let him know I got the sketch. Let him know I remember him too. Give him the chance to decide if he wants to see me." It was the sensible choice, the cautious choice, and Lisa understood it. But part of her wanted to grab them both and force them into the same room before another 50 years could pass. "Okay," Lisa said. "But don't take too long. Life's short, even when you've lived as much of it as you two have." Elena hugged her hard and tight. "Thank you for this, for caring about two old people and their ancient love story. You have a good heart." They exchanged phone numbers before Elena left, and Lisa watched her drive away, still clutching the napkin with Mr. Thompson's address written on it. The lunch shift was winding down, and Pete was giving her curious looks, but Lisa didn't explain. Some stories were too precious to share with just anyone. Tuesday morning came, and Lisa was a bundle of nerves. Would Mr. Thompson show up? Would he know his notebook was here? Would Elena have contacted him? The questions spun through her mind as she prepared for her shift. 8 o'clock came. The door chimed. Mr. Thompson walked in right on schedule. He looked better than he had the previous Thursday, less tired, more settled. He headed for his usual booth, then seemed to remember something. "Lisa," he called over. "I think I might have left my notebook here last time. Has anyone found it?" "I have it," Lisa said, retrieving it from behind the counter. It was in the lost and found. Relief washed over his face as he took it from her. Thank you. I've been lost without it. Did you give the sketch to Elena? Lisa nodded. Saturday morning before her cooking class. He gripped the notebook tighter. And? What did she say? How did she react? She cried, Lisa said honestly. She recognized your drawing style immediately. She said your name, Jamie. She called you Jamie. The emotion that crossed Mr. Thompson's face was almost overwhelming. He sat down heavily in his booth, like his legs could no longer support him. She remembered me, he said, and it came out like a prayer. She did more than remember you, Lisa said, sliding into the seat across from him. Mr. Thompson, she's been looking for you. After you left Seattle, she tried to find you. She never married. She said she thought about you almost every day. He stared at her, frozen in shock. That's not possible, and it's very possible. It's true. She loved you too. She still does. Mr. Thompson put his head in his hands. His shoulders shook. Lisa wasn't sure if he was crying or laughing or both. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red, but his face was transformed. He looked younger somehow, like hope had taken years off him. Where is she? Can I see her? Is it too late? It's not too late, Lisa assured him. She wanted to write you a letter first, to give you the choice of whether to respond. But Mr. Thompson, she wants to see you just as much as you want to see her. He stood up abruptly. I can't wait for a letter. I've waited 52 years. Mr. Thompson grabbed his notebook and stood at the booth, his whole body vibrating with nervous energy. Lisa had never seen him like this. The quiet, reserved man who came in twice a week for coffee had disappeared, replaced by someone desperate and alive, and absolutely terrified. Where does she live? He asked. Can you call her? Can you tell her I'm coming? Lisa pulled out her phone, her own hand shaking with excitement. She dialed Elena's number and it rang 3 times before Elena picked up. Hello? Elena, it's Lisa from the diner. He's here. Mr. Thompson is here and he wants to see you right now. Can you meet us at the community center? The place where this all started? There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Now, today? I haven't written the letter yet. I look terrible. I'm not ready. Elena, Lisa said firmly, you've been ready for 52 years. We'll be there in 20 minutes. She hung up before Elena could argue. Mr. Thompson was already heading for the door, moving faster than Lisa had ever seen him move. She grabbed her jacket, yelled to Pete that she had an emergency, and followed him outside. I'll drive, she offered, knowing his hands were shaking too badly to be safe behind the wheel. He didn't argue, just climbed into her passenger seat, clutching his notebook like a lifeline. The drive to the community center felt both endless and far too short. Mr. Thompson stared out the window in silence, but Lisa could see his lips moving. He was talking to himself, maybe practicing what he'd say, maybe praying, maybe both. What if she changed her mind? He asked suddenly. What if seeing me in person is different from remembering me? What if I'm a disappointment? You won't be, Lisa said with absolute certainty. Trust me. They pulled into the community center parking lot. It was a Tuesday morning, so the building wasn't officially open yet. But Elena's car was already there, parked near the front entrance. She must have broken every speed limit to beat them. Mr. Thompson couldn't seem to make himself get out of the car. He sat there frozen, staring at the building that held so many memories. What if this is a mistake? He whispered. What if we've built this up in our minds so much that the reality can't possibly measure up? Lisa turned to face him. Mr. Thompson, listen to me. You've spent 52 years wondering what if. You've carried her memory with you through a whole lifetime. You painted her portrait in your notebook. You drove past this building hundreds of times but never had the courage to go in. This is your moment. Don't let fear steal it from you. He took a deep breath, then another. Finally, he nodded and opened the car door. Lisa walked with him to the entrance where the old wooden door stood slightly ajar. They stepped inside together. The main hall was quiet and dim, lit only by the sunlight filtering through the high windows. And there, standing in front of the faded oak tree mural, was Elena. She'd changed into a nicer dress and fixed her silver hair. Her hands were clasped in front of her, and even from across the room, Lisa could see they were trembling. Mr. Thompson stopped walking. He stood at the entrance to the hall, 20 feet away from the woman he'd loved for more than half his life. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence was so complete that Lisa could hear her own heartbeat. Then Elena turned around. The years fell away. Despite the silver hair and the wrinkles, despite the decades that had passed, Lisa could see the young woman from the photograph in Elena's face. And when Elena saw Mr. Thompson, her hand flew to her mouth, and tears immediately began streaming down her cheeks. "Jamie," she breathed. "Elena," he replied, and his voice cracked on her name. They stood there, frozen, drinking in the sight of each other. Lisa felt like an intruder on an incredibly private moment, but she couldn't make herself leave. She'd brought them here. She needed to see this through. "You look exactly the same," Mr. Thompson said, which was a lie, but also somehow the truest thing he could have said. "I'd know you anywhere." Elena let out a watery laugh. "I'm old and gray, Jamie, we both are. You're beautiful," he said simply. "You've always been beautiful." Elena took a step forward, then another. Mr. Thompson did the same. They moved slowly, carefully, like they were afraid the other might disappear if they moved too fast. With each step, the distance between them closed. 20 feet became 15. 15 became 10. When they were finally close enough to touch, they stopped. They stood there face to face, and Lisa could see them both shaking. "I looked for you," Elena said, her voice thick with tears, "after you left for Seattle. I tried so hard to find you." "I was there," he said. "I was there the whole time thinking about you, wondering if you ever thought about me." "Every day," Elena whispered. "Every single day, Jamie, I never stopped." "I'm sorry," he said, and now he was crying too. "I'm so sorry I left. I'm sorry I didn't tell you how I felt. I'm sorry I wasted 50 years of our lives because I was too scared and too stupid to say 3 simple words." Elena reached up and touched his face, her fingertips gentle against his cheek. "Say them now." Mr. Thompson covered her hand with his own. "I love you. I've loved you since 1973. I've loved you through my entire life, through every moment, good and bad. I've loved you without hope of ever seeing you again. And standing here now looking at you, I love you even more than I did back then." Elena made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. "I love you too. I've always loved you. Only you. There was never anyone else who could compare." And then they were kissing, right there in front of the oak tree mural that he'd painted for her 52 years ago. It was tentative at first, uncertain, like they were learning each other again. But then Mr. Thompson's arms went around her, and Elena leaned into him. And it was like watching 2 pieces of a puzzle finally snap together after being apart for far too long. Lisa wiped at her own tears. She should leave, give them privacy, but her feet wouldn't move. She was witnessing something miraculous, something that most people never got to see. True love, given a second chance. When they finally pulled apart, they were both laughing and crying at the same time. Mr. Thompson kept touching Elena's face, her hair, her hands, like he needed to prove to himself that she was real. "I have so many questions," Elena said, smiling through her tears. "Where have you been?" "What happened to you?" "Tell me everything." "I will," he promised. "I'll tell you everything. Every boring detail of the last 52 years. But first I need to know about you, your life, what you've done, the lives you've changed." They moved to a bench against the wall, sitting close together, hands intertwined. Lisa finally found the will to move. She started backing toward the door, ready to give them the privacy they deserved.